Imagine defying the most ruthless dictator in history by secretly building the exact weapon he specifically banned. In the darkest days of World War II, the German war machine was bleeding out on the Eastern Front. They needed a miracle. They needed a weapon that could change the rules of combat forever. But there was one massive problem. Adolf Hitler absolutely hated the idea. He ordered the project to be destroyed. But the engineers, they didn't listen. They lied to the Führer. They falsified documents. They renamed the weapon to hide it in plain sight, secretly shipping it to the freezing trenches of Russia. And when Hitler finally found out what they had done, he didn't execute them. Instead, he gave the weapon a name that would echo through history: the Sturmgewehr, the storm rifle. Today, we are uncovering the unbelievable true story of the STG-44. It is the weapon that birthed the modern assault rifle, inspired the legendary AK-47, and featured technology so bizarre, like curved barrels and infrared vampire scopes, that it feels like science fiction. If you think you know World War II weapons, forget everything you've learned. Because this is the gun that changed warfare forever. Let's dig in. To understand why the STG-44 was so revolutionary, you have to understand the fatal flaw of every military in the world in 1940. It was all about the combat math. For decades, generals believed that infantry battles would be fought at extreme distances. Because of this, standard issue rifles like the German Carabiner 98K, the British Lee Enfield, and the American M1 Garand fired massive, full-powered cartridges. The German 7.92 by 57mm Mauser round was lethal at 1,000 meters. But there was a catch. When the war actually started, combat didn't happen at 1,000 meters. Data from the front lines revealed a shocking truth. Over 80% of all infantry firefights took place at less than 300 meters. Often it was closer to 50 meters in ruined cities like Stalingrad or dense forests. In close quarters combat, a long, heavy bolt-action rifle that held only 5 rounds was a death sentence. So, armies introduced submachine guns like the famous MP-40 or the Soviet PPSh-41. These fired small pistol calibers like the 9mm. They were devastatingly fast inside a building, but absolutely useless if the enemy was 200 yards away across an open field. The pistol bullets just didn't have the energy. The German infantryman was trapped. He either had a rifle that shot too far and too slow, or a submachine gun that shot too fast and too short. There was a 200-meter dead zone where the German soldier was being slaughtered by Soviet troops. The engineers realized they didn't need a better rifle. They needed an entirely new category of weapon. They needed a bullet that was smaller than a sniper round, but bigger than a pistol round. Enter the 7.92 by 33mm Kurz. Kurz means short. It was a genius compromise. It had enough gunpowder to kill a man at 300 meters, but it was light enough that a soldier could carry twice as much ammo and fire it on full automatic without the recoil ripping the gun out of his hands. This intermediate cartridge is the exact same philosophy used in today's M16S and AK-47s. The Germans were just the first to figure it out. But having a brilliant bullet means nothing if you can't build the gun to fire it. And by 1943, Germany was running out of time, running out of steel, and running out of skilled machinists. Legendary firearms designer Hugo Schmeisser was tasked with making the impossible. He couldn't design a weapon that required hours of slow, expensive milling from solid blocks of steel, like the old bolt-action rifles. He had to make it cheap, fast, and idiot-proof. His solution? Stamped sheet metal. Instead of carving the rifle out of solid steel, the STG-44's receiver was created by taking heavy flat sheets of metal and pressing them into shape using massive industrial machines. It was the same process used to make car fenders and cheap toys. Traditional gunsmiths laughed at it. They thought it looked ugly, crude, and unprofessional. But it was a masterpiece of mass production. The STG-44 weighed about 10.2 pounds, or 4.6 kilograms, loaded with a massive 30-round curved magazine. It operated on a gas piston system, capturing the explosive gas from the fired bullet to push the bolt back and load the next round. It had a selector switch, allowing the soldier to fire single, accurate shots, or flip it to full auto, unleashing 500 rounds per minute. But remember, Hitler had explicitly canceled the assault rifle program. He believed submachine guns were a waste of ammo and insisted factories focus on standard rifles. To keep the project alive, the engineers pulled off one of the greatest deceptions in military history. They designated the weapon as the MP-43, standing for Maschinenpistole 43. They literally disguised a revolutionary new assault rifle as an ordinary submachine gun on official factory paperwork, just so Hitler wouldn't notice, and it worked, until the weapons hit the mud of the Eastern Front. In late 1943, the first batches of these secret rifles were airdropped to German troops who were surrounded and completely cut off by the Red Army in the Cholm pocket. The situation was desperate. The Soviets were launching massive human wave attacks. But when the Red Army charged the German lines, they were met with something they had never seen before. Entire squads of German soldiers were firing with the accuracy of a rifleman, but laying down the suppressing fire of a heavy machine gun. The Soviet attack was shattered. The MP-43 wasn't just good, it was a terrifying force multiplier. A squad of 5 men armed with these weapons could outgun a squad of 15 men armed with bolt-action rifles. German field commanders were stunned. When military leaders returned from the Eastern Front to meet with Hitler, the Führer asked his generals what they needed to win the war. One general famously replied, "More of these new rifles." Hitler was confused. What new rifles? The secret was out. Hitler was furious that his orders had been ignored. He demanded to see the weapon. But after watching a live-fire demonstration and reading the ecstatic combat reports from his frontline commanders, even the stubborn dictator had to admit the truth. The weapon was a masterpiece. Being a master of propaganda, Hitler decided that machine pistol wasn't a cool enough name for a weapon this powerful. He personally renamed it the Sturmgewehr 44, which literally translates to storm rifle or assault rifle. With that single word, Hitler inadvertently named an entirely new class of firearms that dominates the world to this day. But the STG-44 story was about to get a lot weirder. Desperate to turn the tide of a losing war, German scientists began equipping the STG with attachments that defy belief. As the Allied forces closed in on Germany from the west and the Soviets crushed them from the east, the Nazi high command grew increasingly desperate. They didn't just need more weapons, they needed weapons that could do the impossible, and the STG-44 became the testbed for some of the most bizarre military inventions ever conceived. First, let's talk about the Krumlauf. Imagine being pinned down by enemy sniper fire in a ruined city. If you stick your head around the corner to shoot back, you're dead. The German engineers asked, what if the gun could shoot around the corner for you? They actually designed a curved barrel attachment for the STG-44. It came in 30-degree, 45-degree, and even extreme 90-degree curves. It was fitted with a special periscope mirror sight, allowing a soldier to stay completely hidden behind a brick wall while firing down an alleyway. They even made a version for tank crews to shoot enemy infantry hiding in the vehicle's blind spots. But physics is a cruel mistress. Firing a bullet at 2,200 feet per second through a bent steel tube creates immense friction. The bullets would often shatter inside the curve, turning the rifle into a glorified shotgun that sprayed deadly shrapnel. Worse, the lifespan of the Krumlauf barrel was incredibly short, sometimes lasting only 160 rounds before it warped or exploded. It was a brilliant, but ultimately doomed act of desperation. But the Krumlauf wasn't their most terrifying invention. That title belongs to the Zielgerät 1-229, codenamed Vampir. In the dead of night, when soldiers usually felt safe to move, a new nightmare appeared. The Vampir was an active infrared night vision scope mounted directly on top of the STG-44. It was the first of its kind in human history. A sniper equipped with the Vampir could see perfectly in pitch-black darkness, hunting enemy patrols who had no idea they were being watched. But this sci-fi advantage came with a brutal physical cost. The scope itself was heavy, but the battery pack required to power the infrared spotlight had to be strapped to the soldier's back, using a massive wooden frame. It weighed nearly 30 pounds, about 13.5 kilograms. The soldiers carrying this equipment were nicknamed Nachtjäger, night hunters. It was terrifying, it was futuristic, but it was too little, too late. The The Third Reich was collapsing, and the STG-44 was about to fall into the hands of the one nation that would use its secrets to conquer the globe. By April 1945, the once secret STG-44 was the last line of defense in the burning rubble of Berlin. Teenagers from the Hitler Youth and old men from the Volkssturm were handed these high-tech assault rifles and told to fight to the death against millions of Soviet soldiers. When the war finally ended in May 1945, the Red Army captured hundreds of thousands of STG-44s, along with the factories that built them, the blueprints, and most importantly, the designer himself, Hugo Schmeisser. And this is where we hit the biggest controversy in firearms history. Schmeisser was taken by the Soviets to the city of Izhevsk, a massive weapons manufacturing hub. Just a few years later, in 1947, a young Soviet tank mechanic named Mikhail Kalashnikov unveiled a new weapon for the Red Army, the AK-47. Look at the STG-44. Now look at the AK-47. Visual cue, side-by-side comparison on screen. The curved 30-round magazine, the stamped metal receiver, the gas-operated piston tube running above the barrel, the prominent front sight. To the untrained eye, the AK-47 looks like a direct, shameless copy of the STG-44. For decades, military historians and gun enthusiasts have argued relentlessly. Did Kalashnikov steal the design from the captive German genius? The truth is a bit more complicated. Philosophically, yes, the Soviets absolutely copied the German concept. They saw the devastating effectiveness of the intermediate 7.92mm Kurz cartridge and immediately created their own version, the legendary 7.62 by 39mm Soviet round. They also adopted the concept of a stamped metal, fully automatic assault rifle for every infantryman. But mechanically, they are vastly different machines. If you open them up, the STG-44 uses a tilting bolt mechanism to lock the bullet in place before firing. The AK-47, however, uses a rotating bolt, a design Kalashnikov actually borrowed from the American M1 Garand. The AK-47 is famously simple, loose, and incredibly reliable in mud and sand. The STG-44, true to its German engineering, was tightly fitted, complex, and prone to jamming if dirt got into the receiver. Kalashnikov didn't blindly copy the STG-44, but without the STG-44 proving that the concept of an assault rifle worked, the AK-47 as we know it would likely never have existed. The STG-44 changed the doctrine of global warfare overnight. It proved that armies didn't need long-range, heavy battle rifles for the average soldier. They needed volume of fire, they needed mobility, they needed assault rifles. From the M16 in the jungles of Vietnam to the modern rifles carried by special forces today, every single assault rifle on the planet traces its DNA directly back to the desperate, forbidden project that defied Hitler's orders. But the STG-44 itself didn't disappear into museums. Because the Soviets captured so many, they distributed them to their allies around the world. Decades after World War II ended, the unmistakable silhouette of the STG-44 kept appearing in the most unexpected places. They were found in the hands of the Viet Cong in the 1960s. They were seized by American troops in Iraq. And in 2012, Syrian rebels uncovered a massive hidden cache of 5,000 perfectly preserved STG-44s, using the 70-year-old Nazi weapons in modern urban combat. It is the ghost of World War II that simply refuses to die. It was born in deception, forged in desperation, and became the undisputed father of modern combat. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the weapon that changed everything, hit that like button. It tells the YouTube algorithm that history still matters, and it helps our channel grow. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Mikhail Kalashnikov deserves full credit for the AK-47, or did Hugo Schmeisser actually design it behind the scenes? Let me know down in the comments. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell notification, because next time, we're looking at the fastest, most terrifying machine gun ever built. Thanks for watching. Keep the history alive. Dismissed.